Bruce DuMont continues on Beyond the Beltway for hour number 2. Thank you very much wherever you're listening from coast to coast and border to border around the world at beyondthebeltway.com, whether it's on Facebook or Sirius XM satellite radio or you name it. We're on a lot of platforms, and it's great to have you with us this evening. Rebecca Abraham is a Democrat. Doug Eibendahl is a Republican. You're going to find that they disagree on virtually everything, and they join us for hour number 2. And I want to begin with you, Rebecca, and ask the question. There's big concern and debate at the moment as to whether or not America's school children should be going back to in-classroom teaching in the fall. Where do you come down on that debate?
On a school board, and I am a nurse, and I make all of my decisions based on scientific data.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that we should go back to school for children and teachers who it is safe to go back for, with safety precautions. So masks, hand washing, safety checks, more nurses. Smaller classroom sizes, no more than 10 in a classroom.
Okay.
So that's what I think.
Very good. I'm going to let you follow up in just a moment, but I said you guys are going to disagree on everything, but Doug, I'm not so sure that you disagree with what Rebecca has said thus far. Am I correct?
You are correct, Bruce. And by the way, thanks for having me back on, Bruce. Missed you. You're correct. I do agree with Rebecca. Yeah, the children need to go back to school. And like Rebecca said, with the appropriate, safety measures, hand washing, and all that. I'm not sure about the, exact class size. I'll let the people who are closest to the situation decide that. But following the science, this is not this COVID-19 is really not hitting the children. So yeah, and being at home all the time is actually very unhealthy for these kids.
I want to ask our director, Andrew Marshall, to find out whether there's any way that we can correct your audio. Your audio sounds a little tinny. I don't mean to insult you, but again, we want to make sure that your audio is as pleasant and easy to understand as was Abraham's, Rebecca. And I want to go back to Rebecca and say, Rebecca, when you talk about the science, I mean, in this particular case, it seems to me that you may be on the same side as the president here, and you're not very often on his side.
No,
because
never.
he has said, we're going to listen to the science. We want teachers involved. The only thing he would add is he wants, local school districts or governors or mayors to make that choice. And I assume you agree with that because everyone wants to make sure the kids are protected. And in this particular case, science seems to be on your side and the president's side.
So I do want to clarify that I believe him and I said these things for very different reasons.
Yeah. But you came together. The bottom line, you agreed.
Yeah, and so did the American Academy of Pediatrics. And they did clarify that they want schools to reopen in places where it is safe to do so.
Right.
I happen to live in one of those places. Numbers in my state, I live in Illinois, are spiking, not in my area.
Right.
Downstate, different story. If numbers started spiking here, I would feel differently.
Yeah.
But where this conversation gets really nuanced is there is a mortality related to mental health and abuse and malnutrition for children to stay home. That doesn't mean children are not 1% safe. They're safer than adults, but where the concern is, studies from the Journal of American Medicine talked about what happened in China.
You don't deny, at least at this moment, you don't deny that the president would want to continue classrooms in areas where the science turned against him and the numbers went up. I mean, everyone wants to protect the kids. Doug, do you agree, follow on that point as well?
Of course, the president's looking out. He has to look out for all Americans, and he's been doing that. I think the motives of the people that are questionable would be these teachers unions that want as much money as possible for doing the least work as possible. And if they want to stay home or they don't want to work, then fine, cut their then They shouldn't get paid or not paid the same, and they should. Our property taxes should be slashed.
Rebecca, you mentioned you're on a school board. How has your school board dealt with teachers and their salary demands, if any?
Nothing is changing for us, and I fully support the teachers union. And I understand they are scared, and demands of unions and working people in the past have not been heard. So I think there's a lot of hopelessness. Like, I know certain school districts don't even have soap, and one of the arguments is, how could we go back to school if we didn't even have soap last year? And what I would like to see from all unions in general, and I think they do their best, they have to listen to their membership, is I feel like the general public has to fight for what we deserve. And we've deserved a lot more from education and public education for a long time. My concern with going back to school is not that mortality of kids staying home. And what I was saying is JAMA did quoted how in Italy it actually affected mortality of grandparents, because then they were the ones watching the kids. So there's still a mortality on the other side. I'm concerned about inequities and that equity gap of children who have special needs, low income kids. They already have a huge gap in education, and now that's going to grow. We can't afford to, I don't want to.
Would you acknowledge that in that gap that you talked about, and again, it's a gap. I mean, everyone is going to have a gap. Again, those who are disadvantaged will always have a greater gap than let's say the general school population, because we don't know yet, and it will take several years to figure out how much has been lost in American education because of what's happened for the last 5 months. I mean, people are not being as educated as well as they should. There's certain things they're not learning because they're not in school. And I'm wondering, in your case, Doug, would you acknowledge that maybe thus far this experiment in online education has not proven to be a great answer to our problem at the moment, or are you a big proponent of online education?
I do not have kids in school, and but from what I've read and what I've gathered, it does appear to be a failure, especially in the big cities. It appears that in the big school districts, especially, the percentage of students that are participating is alarmingly low, and the number that are participating all the time and doing all the work that they should is very, very small. So the bottom line, look, kids are rioting every single night in Portland, almost 2 straight months now. So if they can, but that apparently is all fine. So
those are college kids. Those are not. They're not.
People are going to be rioting, and I actually don't want to call it a riot. It's an uprising.
Okay.
That's going to continue to happen.
When we come back, we're going to, because all this agreement we've had in segment 1 appears to be falling apart as we head to a commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about what some of the older students are doing, not the elementary school. I don't think they're in Portland yet. We'll be back with our guests, 1-800-723-8289 from coast to coast and border to border. I'm Bruce DuMont. Bruce DuMont back listening to Beyond the Beltway this evening, wherever you're listening from coast to coast. Nice to have you with us. Before the break, we had a difference of opinion as to what is happening in Portland, Oregon. So let me ask Rebecca, you seem to think it was an uprising. My question to you is, why is this still happening after 60 days, in your view?
Nothing's been really fixed. What happened to George Floyd, it's great that he got arrested, but it shouldn't have happened, and it continues to happen. We have a problematic.
So you believe what's happening, that the attempted destruction of the federal building is about a Black Lives Matter and it's about George Floyd. I haven't heard George Floyd's name mentioned in regards to anything in Portland for about 3 weeks now. So tell me why you think this is about George Floyd when a federal building is being attacked.
it stemmed from George Floyd and defund police movement, which I support. Defund police, defund ICE. I think that there has been an abuse of power in this country for too long. We have oligarchs running everything. Most of our electeds are millionaires, and the police pick and choose what laws and they choose to arrest people for, and they choose who they are going to arrest over which laws they choose to arrest for.
Do you believe that defacing federal buildings is against the law?
I mean, yes, but laws aren't religion, and sometimes you have to, property over people. People are dying. People are suffering.
All right, I want to pick up on property over people. Go ahead, Doug. I want to let you pick up on this one. Go ahead.
For heaven's sakes, these violent leftists are not just destroying people, but not just destroying property. They're also hurting people. I mean, we got those 2 federal agents that may actually lose their eyesight for good forever because some of these misfits were shining lasers in their eyes. Talked to the Chicago police last Friday. I know you talked about that in the first hour of your show, that were defending government property last Friday in Chicago. The Christopher Columbus statue has been there since 1933.
And it got taken down.
And these people are throwing, these leftists are, AKA the Democratic Party base, are throwing, full cans of cans, bottles, fireworks. It's out of control. And, Bruce, I'll also say, this is actually nothing new. Remember 4 years ago, Bruce, that these same leftist groups were engaged in the same kind of violence. Rich, you and I were both there at the infamous Trump rally at UIC in March of 2016. Right. You were down in the VIP bunker, which was appropriate, being the VIP.
No, I agree. I agree. But I want to go back to Rebecca, because Rebecca, you seem to be condoning this activity, and I want you to either condone it or explain why you don't condemn it.
Well, I don't condemn it because people are literally dying from systemic violence every day.
So you don't, let me just correct, you don't condemn protesters or rioters, or we'll call them protesters, but they're a lot more than protesters, when they put nails in a baseball or on a bat and throw it at a police officer, or they throw urine or excrement in their face, that they scream in the. You don't condone. You don't condemn that activity.
And there's a difference between violence and violence of people and violence of things. And I want to clarify that I am a leftist. I am a radical leftist. I'm definitely a Marxist, and that's not us. Like, we're getting infiltrated from far right groups that are co-opting. There's no evidence
of that, because the groups that are out there, the people, by the way, who were at the Columbus statue attacking Chicago police officers, and I believe that 49 of them were injured, they were not right of center people. They were leftists. They were tearing down a statue which they chose to try to tear down. You probably agree that it was a good idea to do it. But my point is, when they're taking weapons and they're throwing frozen water bottles at a police officer, that's not peaceful protest. So I'm asking you, you're condoning it, you're not condemning it.
Where the police are randomly beating protesters who are nonviolent, the police are shooting at protesters.
Where have you seen evidence that a peaceful protester has been beaten by anybody? Give me their name and the place.
Here as a medic at these protests, and I've seen it in front of my eyes. People are doing nothing, and they're getting punched by police.
Poor little babies doing nothing. You think people believe that?
No, absolutely nothing. Holding signs.
Doug, go ahead.
That is so insulting to America's police officers. There's absolutely no evidence that is happening. If anything, the police in this country, especially in places like Chicago, are showing extraordinary restraint. These people are saints, what they have to put up with from these violent leftists. Rebecca's really making this too easy. I mean, she wants to, I cannot believe that I mean, but she reflects. This is the Democratic Party now. They embrace the violence of
people like me.
Rebecca, can I finish? I'll let you go on. They embrace the violence of. And they lie and they poke their finger in the eye of Chicago's police force or America's police.
Okay, now let me stop. Let me ask. I want to go back to Rebecca. She has identified herself as a Marxist, but you're also a Democrat, are you not?
Yeah,
you're here now. You're here tonight. I mean, you were going to talk about Joe Biden. But you were not originally a Joe Biden fan.
No, but we have somebody who's an autocrat, an oligarch, fascist. So I have to vote for Joe Biden, and I recommend everyone does. Okay. I look forward to 2022 and 2024, where hopefully there's some reforms in the Democratic Party.
What are the reforms What are the reforms in the party that you hope that a President Biden would instigate?
I would like to see national legislation to legalize marijuana. I would like to see Medicare for all. I would like to see free college tuition. My list goes on. I would like to see, essentially, I know this is going to make you guys cry, and that's okay. I would like to see more socialist programs. I want to see every American, with how much money we have in this nation, could live an upper class lifestyle. Instead, we're all fighting for crumbs. Well,
and who will pay for all of this?
We have the money, the 50 billionaires, Jeff Bezos, like the military budget, all of it. We could cut that military budget. We'll be fine. We could tax the billionaires. That'll be fine. And we'll be much better off.
All right, Doug, that's a Joe Biden fan. Tell her where she's wrong.
About taking money from the military. This whole thing. This is. I would say this is the biggest political mistake. What Biden and what the Democrats are doing, poking their finger in the eye of U.S. law enforcement, of law and order, is the biggest political mistake, biggest blunder since 4 years ago when Hillary Clinton defamed half of America as deplorables and irredeemables. It's crazy, but it's where the Democratic Party is now. The idea that somehow law and order is out of fashion, or that voters don't want law and order and they're supporting these leftists that are these things that Rebecca's talking about. These are people's livelihoods. When the mob went through and burned businesses on the south side of Chicago, that's hurting Black people mostly. That's exactly what happened. That's happening all over the country.
Are you surprised at the largeness of these some of these protests, Doug? That they were not fly by night. They seem to be going on, and certainly they're going on in Chicago, if not other cities as well. Are you surprised that?
No, I'm not. What I was trying to say before, Bruce, was that if you recall 4 years ago, it wasn't just the Trump rally at UIC, right. The only one. You actually had to shut that one down. But if you recall, 4 years ago, there were instigators instigating violence at Trump rallies all over the country. People were being paid to do that. There was a big that was exposed. There's all you Google and you find the stories about that. People were being paid. People were being paid to go to Trump rallies and to instigate violence. What's happened now? Most people a sane person would have said, you know what? I think that's a really bad strategy, and it didn't work.
All right, I want to be.
What the left has done.
I want to go back. I want to go. Doug, I want to go back to Rebecca to follow up on that again, and I want to focus on 2020. Let's not spend too much time looking in the rearview mirror. But Rebecca, go back to you're defending your vote for Joe Biden in hopes that 4 years from now the party will be dramatically changed. Is there someone as a running mate that you think is best likely to give you what you want in the long run?
I like Stacey Abrams. I like Barbara Lee.
Yeah.
I like Elizabeth Warren. Those are all fine choices.
So any one of them would be good for you.
I want somebody who is from the working class, I want somebody who stands for the working class, somebody who's rooted in working class politics. And I think
so. A Val Demings would not be someone you would support.
I would. I mean, there's a difference between support and excited. We got to do what we got to do. As a nurse, I have a president that's actively trying to kill me and my profession. So I'd like a president that gives us PPE and.
Okay. I want to come back. I want to come back with that, Doug. Also, when we come back, we're going to have you on as well. 1-800-723-8029 from coast to coast and border to border. I'm Bruce DuMont. Bruce DuMont back. Thank you very much for joining us tonight from coast to coast and border to border. Don't forget that this program, in addition to being on America's great radio stations, is also, you can watch it on Facebook Live every Sunday night. You can also find us on YouTube, and also you can find us on Vimeo, and you can find us on beyondthebeltway.com. And if you live in the city of Chicago, you can sit back and watch us on Real Live TV every Monday and also throughout the week on Comcast. And also, we are carried in Houston, Texas. So there's lots of places to see us. But again, beyondthebeltway.com, if you're ever lost and want to find us somewhere on the radio dial, if you're traveling across the country, beyondthebeltway.com, you can find us there. Let's now take a moment and let each of our guests introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their background. And we begin with Rebecca Abraham. Rebecca?
Hi. I am a registered nurse, and I own my own consulting business, Acute on Chronic. I am a cannabis consultant and a patient advocate. I'm a Democratic delegate from 16 and 2020, and then I'm getting a certificate in global women's health.
Okay. And when you go to the convention, will you vote for Joe Biden, or were you for someone else in the primary?
I will vote for Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, okay.
But he pulled out, so in the general, I'll vote for Joe Biden.
Okay, and Doug Eibendahl, who's hopefully our audio will improve now because you're going to join us on the telephone as we watch you on your video feed as well. But go ahead, Doug, give us a little background on who you are and how you got here tonight.
Sure. I'm Doug Eibendahl. I'm a Chicago attorney. I'm a former general counsel of the Illinois Republican Party. Before law school, I got an MBA at the University of Chicago and was a bank examiner for the Federal Reserve. But I guess the thing I'm most proud of, I'm a Southern Illinois farm boy. I grew up on a family farm in Southern Illinois in far downstate Washington County, which I guess cancel culture will want to force a name change on that. But it was a good place to grow up.
And also, we should mention for a long time, listeners and viewers of this program, way back in 2016, early in 2016, Doug Eibendahl appeared on this program, I think, for the very first time, and he was a very outspoken supporter of Donald Trump from the very beginning. He never wavered. He thought Donald Trump could win, and so he is one of those who is a true blue, dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter. And let me just ask, Doug, without giving away any secret that you might have, at this moment in time, are you worried at all about where the public polls suggest that the president is, or do you think there's plenty of time left for him to close the gap?
I guess I'm about as worried as I was in 2016 when all the polls said he was absolutely positively going to lose, and then he went on to a 30-state landslide win. But no, I don't want to be flippant about it. I think every candidate should always. I think in any campaign, every candidate should run like they're 10 points behind. No, my advice to any Trump supporter: no, do not. This thing is not in the bag. Anything can happen. There's a lot of brainwashing going on. A lot of our schools are bad. A lot of people are not seeing through all the disinformation out there. That's another big change from 2016. As much as the press was in the tank for Hillary Clinton. It's even more now.
Would
so a lot of people have been brainwashed. But,
would you acknowledge,
Trump has done it before.
Okay. Would you acknowledge that the president last week showed a different side when he, wore a mask, told people to wear a mask, admitted that things may get worse than better? I mean, he had 3 good press appearances in a row. Would you acknowledge that that might indicate a slight change in tone that could help him close the gap? Doug? Did you hear that, Doug? I guess not. Rebecca, let me ask you that question. The president last week, at least according to a lot of media people, and that he showed a different tone last week.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
My back.
Go ahead, Doug. Let me do this. We had a little technical snafu.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. Go, Doug. You start, and then we're going to go to Rebecca. The same question about the change in attitude that the president displayed last week. Doug. Well, Rebecca, are you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, he's way late to try to mitigate any risk now. I think he only threw on the mask because, one, they work. We didn't have the research when COVID hit the U.S. that cloth masks in the community worked. Now we do, and they do. And it shouldn't have never got this far. We should have had testing and tracing. He's just backpedal now that the red states are running out of ICU beds and don't have enough staff. He has to backpedal when your voters are literally dying from.
But also as a nurse, looking at the whole, the last 5 to 7 months, would you acknowledge that at the beginning nobody knew what was going on, and you would say that a lot of people still don't know what's going on? They don't know whether the percentage of this, the percentage of that. You wear a mask, you don't wear a mask. I mean, would you acknowledge that that there wasn't anyone really in the medical field that absolutely positively knew what was the right thing to do, including those that were working at CDC?
The CDC did not act correctly. They harmed nurses by saying we could wear cloth masks in the hospital. That's not safe. But that was defunded, and our pandemic team was dissolved. That was a Republican decision. That was a Trump decision. We had information coming from science that we had information coming from China that our government didn't give doctors and scientists, and that was very intentional. Once we had COVID cases, we could have shut everything down. We could have acted like South Korea. Again, we have the money. We could have used that military budget to swab people, test people, give out PPE everywhere, and we chose not to. Is it a new disease process that we don't understand? Yes. We're learning new things every day, and science changes. But he seemed very willfully ignorant up until like 5 days ago.
But again, the decision to shut down, flights from China and from Europe, that appeared to be a pretty good idea that some people in CDC didn't think was a good idea. Does he not get credit for anything he did? Anything?
He should have had, when we were rising in March, April, we should have followed the steps of countries that handled this, like South Korea, and we didn't. Yeah. They held back PPE. He could have had every factory making protective equipment.
Well, he did. I mean, ultimately he did. But again, I don't. You've made your point, and obviously we're not going to change your opinion here. But I want to go to Doug and let Doug respond to some of that, and then we'll move on to another topic. Go ahead, Doug. Hopefully you're with us on the phone at the moment.
Yeah, hopefully I am. I was dropped off there for a bit, but I believe I heard Rebecca pushing China talking points, which is a little alarming. But the fact is, Donald Trump has done an amazing job on this. He's done everything he possibly could and more. We're actually not only is he helping governors and mayors, but we're actually helping other countries now. To the extent that anyone was slow, it was the governors and mayors, and one wonders what their incentive is to try to keep people in fear. And this sense of chaos, which I think Rebecca is trying to do. But the fact is, Donald Trump from the very beginning, this idea that things changed 5 days ago, no, totally disagree with that. Donald Trump said months ago, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. But he personally is constantly tested, and the people that he's around are constantly tested. It's a very controlled environment. So the reason for him to wear a mask is not the same. But it's also not true that the first time he wore a mask was at that hospital. He actually wore one publicly back in May when he visited.
No,
but
the perception is reality in politics, and the perception was he wasn't interested in it. The according to recent polls, both Republicans and Democrats like the idea, or they support the idea of wearing a mask. So I mean, to wear a mask now is really following a traditional Republican dogma at the moment.
Well, actually, if you recall, maybe you mentioned, Bruce, but early on, our Surgeon General and actually Fauci also, I believe.
Right.
Fauci poo-pooed the idea of a mask.
Yeah, right.
Well, no, that actually does more harm than good because you're always touching your face and losing mask.
So did the Surgeon General.
Scientific data we had at the time, we only had 3 studies that supported a cloth mask. Scientific data changes, and sometimes those changes make us look wrong in the beginning, and then you correct yourself later. But Fauci corrected himself, and no Republican leader followed him on that. Really, Pence went to the hospital without a mask on, like high-fiving people. It was so irresponsible.
But again, everyone, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, you can cherry pick whatever you want to make your point. But again, in this particular case, which was the question I asked, is the president, I do believe, is behind at the moment in the polls. And I do believe that what he has to do is he has to send a message to some moderate Republicans or moderates, and certainly to some independents, that his mind is changing, it's evolving. There were 3 television appearances last week where there was a different tone. The president had a different tone. The media has already acknowledged that. We'll see whether the polls show that. And again, the other thing that he announced is, and again, following, I think, the drumbeat that was led by the media, is that he decided to basically postpone and really tap down a Republican convention in Jacksonville, Florida. When we come back, I want to talk about the political impact, if any, of that with our guests. I'm Bruce DuMont. Thanks for joining us. Bruce DuMont back, and Pam Whitson is listening and she has a question for you, Rebecca. She wants to know whether you believe Antifa is a good organization.
It's not even a real organization. It's not. There's no such organization. And like I fully admitted, I'm very left. I'm a Marxist feminist, and there's no organization.
Who are those who are showing up dressed in similar garb and showing up at some rallies around the country, again, dressed in a certain way, carrying umbrellas and acting with some degree of self-defense tactics? Did that just happen coincidentally?
I mean, at least in Chicago, at the protest I went to, there were some agitators who were not organized. I would call them anarchists, maybe, or just people who like making trouble. Some were from the alt-right that wanted to get us hurt. It doesn't exist.
How do you know they were from the alt-right?
Some of the way they were dressed, some were undercover police, the shoes, their t-shirts.
So you're suggesting that there were undercover police. At which rally are you referring to?
I'm talking about the ones from early June.
So you're saying that undercover police were there instigating violence against you? Is that your charge?
I said there were some undercover police who weren't stopping these agitators who were from the alt-right or random agitators from engaging in violence.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how you
Wow.
I'm just figuring out how you know they're from the alt-right. If you
I mean,
if you
I've been
deny
in
if you deny that Antifa is a group, which I assume that you're sort of acknowledging that they don't exist. How do you say that those that you saw are from the alt-right, not alt-left?
Let's say an Antifa group exists. What does Antifa stand for? Anti-fascist. What is wrong with being anti-fascist? Isn't that what we all should be? Because fascism.
Oh, wait! Come on. You know, they yell like just like the North Koreans call themselves.
Doug, let's
Democratic.
Doug. It's Doug's turn. It's Doug's turn. It's Doug's turn, Rebecca. Doug's turn. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, there's this idea that the anti-fascist Antifa is anti-fascist because that's in their name. Yeah, that's like the North Korea having Democratic Republic in their name. What a joke! I think Rebecca she's channeling like the craziest of the crazy from Twitter. We're into George Orwell territory now, where people who proudly stand up and say that they are part of Antifa, they have social media accounts with the Antifa symbol, and say that they are Antifa and organize these violent demonstrations as Antifa. Oh, it doesn't exist. It's not a thing. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, we're beyond. This is why. Yes, I'm worried about Donald Trump in November. I mean, anything can happen in politics. But at the end of the day, and when people start focusing, they are going to see that Donald Trump is the only thing standing between America and this kind of crazy.
All right.
Okay, so
Rebecca.
Doug, I want to say, you said I'm getting my crazy from Twitter. First of all, that's misogynist.
You
Second
are.
of all, I have a degree in science. I'm a professional. I'm a business owner. I'm an elected official, and I'm working on a master's degree. So I get my information from
When
reading.
you ran for office, did you identify yourself as a Marxist?
I identified as a socialist, and I said Marxist things.
Okay.
Like people have tried to attack me for being a Marxist before in my community, and
I'm
many
just
community members
asking
said,
whether there was
everyone
whether you were
knows
truthful
Rebecca's
to
a
the voters.
socialist.
Okay.
She ran as such. And what's so crazy about Marxism and socialist ideas? I want people to live well. If we end capitalism, we will end racism. I want everyone to have a living wage. I want people to have health care. I want people to have education. I want people to survive and thrive. I want them to be able to eat food. Why is that radical? Why is that crazy?
Rebecca, have you actually
Doug respond.
Rebecca, have you actually read? Well, I was just going to ask Rebecca. Have you actually read Karl Marx's major poem Das Kapital? That's actually a trick question because actually nobody has read it through. It is unreadable. It is a ridiculous racist screed. It's full. The guy was like a huge anti-Semite.
There's a whole collective of Jewish socialists. What? No. And yes, I read it.
He was an anti-Semite. He was an anti-Semite. Major. You obviously have not even studied for all these things about your background or whatever. You've obviously never even read the major tome written by the person you worship.
Just because I'm a woman and a mom, it doesn't mean I haven't read. I've absolutely read. I've studied.
Have you read Das Kapital?
It's great. Like, what you're saying is just like insulting and just bonkers.
Why is it insulting?
It's really a yes or no question.
What's the question?
Yes or no question. Have you read Das Kapital?
I said yes, I have.
I don't believe you.
Okay. Have you? Have you read Das Kapital? Have you read the Manifesto? Have you read Engels? Have you read Sylvia Federici?
It's unreadable. Unreadable.
Okay, so you haven't read it. So
No one has.
What I want is good for working people.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I have to say farewell to Rebecca Abraham, who joins us this evening, and also Doug Eibendahl. Thanks for joining us as well. I'm Bruce DuMont. We want to thank Andrew Marshall for his assistance in the production of this program. Until next week, good night from Evanston, Illinois.